I'm sure there are a lot of you who can relate that when it comes to hunting deer, in a lot of ways, it doesn't matter the method. It's just the ability to be able to be outside, enjoying God's creation, and pursuing an animal that is so multifaceted at surviving that it's quite a challenge, even if you're a seasoned hunter. Having said that, there are certain styles of hunting that people prefer more than others. And my very favorite form of hunting white-tailed deer is still hunting. Still hunting in its purest form is not a spot and stalk. Still hunting, and rather, is making your way through woods or farmland or a swamp, not knowing where a deer is beforehand, and going so slowly that you can actually walk up on that deer without being detected and get off a shot. While I love hunting for mature bucks, this style of hunting is exciting no matter what kind of deer you're pursuing. I get almost as much thrill out of stalking a doe as I do any buck. You may be thinking, well, that's great for you, but I don't think I could ever stalk up on a deer. That's what I used to think too. But it's possible if you're disciplined. And I want to introduce you to something called the 5-step. So let's start at the beginning. Still hunting requires that you actually walk to a spot within shooting distance of a deer without it detecting that you're there, or at least not running away. Pulling back on your bow, releasing an arrow, and doing all of this in a place where that deer is probably called home for a couple of years and has mastered the quality of surviving all kinds of predators and situations. It sounds impossible, but it becomes possible when you break things down into a simple concept. I call it the 5-step. And this is how it works. Just like it sounds, you're walking through the woods or perhaps a swamp or some transition or edge, and you take 5 steps and you stop. Every single time that you stop, you have your binoculars up and you are scanning the area in front of you and to your sides for deer. You don't move from that spot until you feel confident that there's nothing in the immediate range in front of you or to your sides. And when you do start up again, you're only going to take 5 more steps. Now, a lot of people will probably think, I don't have the patience for that. And yet the vast majority of hunters will sit on a stand, and I have no problems with that, for hours on end without moving from that little geographic location. Instead of being boring and not having the patience for still hunting, perhaps you need to rethink what it's like. It's actually some of the most exciting hunting I believe you'll ever encounter. So let me give you 4 key methods that are important to consider so you can tip odds in your favor and have the opportunity to walk right up on a deer and to harvest it. One of the things that I always try to do when I'm still hunting, doing the 5-step, is when I come to that 5th step, I want to make sure that wherever I think deer could potentially be, that there's some kind of obstruction between it and me. Sometimes this is a tree, it may be a rock outcropping, it may be a blowdown, it could be really thick vegetation, like in a swamp you have warm season grasses or cattails or whatever it might be, but you want to make sure that you're actually set up behind something that if a deer does appear, you have the ability to draw back on your bow and get that shot off before the deer knows that you're there. If you stop in an open spot, especially in the woods or in a clearing in a swampy area, you lower your odds substantially for being able to go into that spot undetected. So I made it to the creek back here. And this is the bedroom that I'm in right now. Nothing doing right now, but I feel good
still hunted my way back in here without making any critical mistakes. So had there been a buck back here, or any deer for that matter, I feel like I would have been in the game. I can't emphasize enough how important it is when you're doing still hunting to make sure that you're taking every moment as though there's a buck there, the biggest buck of your life. It'll help you to slow down and to make decisions that keep you quiet, keep your scent away, keep thermals out. It's really, really important to believe that there's a deer there, even if you come in and there's not.
When you're doing the 5-step, focus on the edges, whether that's a terrain feature where you're going from perhaps flat ground into a descent or an ascent, or perhaps it's vegetation that changes, so a spot where woods butts up against a swamp, or perhaps it's a field edge and there's some kind of wooded area off to the side. Whenever you have those edges or those transitions, you have the highest concentrations of deer. And because of that, you owe it to yourself, if you want to be successful as a still hunter, to actually check out those transition areas the most. They will take more thorough effort as you're looking through your binoculars, because transitions typically are more dense than other areas, especially as it relates to vegetation. But oftentimes, this is where you're going to find the deer, and if you want to beat them at their game, you're going to have to do it on their terms, where they are. So make sure you're paying attention to transition locations and edges. You're usually not looking for the entire outline of a deer. You're looking for very slight movement. An ear that flicks, trying to chase away a fly, a head that bobs as it goes up and down, perhaps getting something to eat, and then raising its head so that it can see around. Perhaps just a section of the back quarters as the deer is behind a tree or some other location. These are the things that you want to take notice of. You're looking for these small little movements. And when you start to master picking out parts of deer rather than an entire deer, you up your chances.
Just a fawn, but he came into 4 yards. I think his twin came running across when he spooked. I'm not sure if there's a doe out here, but I'm in a prime big buck spot. I can hear him in there right now.
I call this the 5-step, but when you come to locations where you know that there's a concentration of deer, perhaps it's a known bedding location, or it's a prime food source, perhaps it's a ridge or a flat land that has a lot of hard or soft mast in it, and you know that deer are attracted to that location. When you come to those spots, turn your 5-step into a 3-step. Obviously, this means that you're going to slow down your pace even more. You're stopping every 3rd step. But as you become a seasoned still hunter, what you're going to come to realize is you may even want to make that into a 2-step or even a 1-step, because you may go from being completely hidden to being completely out in the open in 1 step if you're not paying attention. Of course, the most difficult part of still hunting is closing the deal. It's not getting sort of close enough to be able to shoot at a deer. It's getting within that window of space that you know you're confident in releasing an arrow and being reasonably sure that you're going to hit that deer in a vital location so that it doesn't suffer. I think most people would logically assume that you would want to have the wind in your face whenever you're still hunting. I actually prefer to still hunt with a crosswind. And the reason behind that is understanding how deer bed. So mature bucks almost all the time, and there are a couple of exceptions, but they're pretty rare. Almost all the time those bucks are bedded with the wind blowing over their backs, which means if you're walking into the wind, you're actually walking right directly into the path in which they are looking. If you flip that around 90 degrees and you have a crosswind instead, that very same mature buck will most likely be looking 90 degrees away from where you're coming from. This ups the chances for you to be able to sneak up on it. Of course, this is no simple task. If it were easy, everyone would do it. But it certainly tilts things in your favor to be able to make a stalk on that mature buck. An effective method for using this crosswind pattern is to start perhaps with a west wind, and you start on the eastern part of the property. You'll head north, and then at a certain point maybe you turn to your left to the west, go another 30 yards or so, and then you backtrack to the south. You always have that 90-degree crosswind, you're just heading in a different direction. And you can zigzag back and forth on that property in a very concentrated area without messing up a huge amount of acreage and really thoroughly cover it. Not only is it an effective way to hunt, but it's a great way to get to know that property.
So I'm in the middle of making this how-to video on still hunting.